Hey, what's up guys, aarava here, and welcome back to an episode of my F1 2021 My Team Career Mode, episode number 58 today for Imola in Season 4. If you guys did miss the previous episode, the opening round at the Bahrain Grand Prix, then be sure to go check that one out. That was what a chaotic first race. Unbelievable scenes in terms of the result. There were so many question marks, of course, going into that first race. We had so many changes in terms of quite a few major driver transfers. Verstappen to Mercedes. We've had McLaren and a Golf livery. Red Bull is a whole team of my ex-teammates of Mick Schumacher and Sergio Perez. And then, of course, we've got Jenson Button, the 2009 F1 World Champion, who has returned to Formula 1. And on his return, it was the fairy tale return. I can't quite believe it. The win Jenson Button got at the Bahrain Grand Prix was sensational because, of course, it happened in, very odd circumstances. That, kamikaze dive that the reigning world champion Lando Norris gave us whilst we're into the lead of the race, just set everything off basically, allowed Button to get up into what was eventually P3, then P2 as he overtook Russell, and then, just was meant to be for Button, and then just was such bad luck for me. The second he got into second place, our engineers told us we had an ERS issue, which took us out of the contention for the lead, almost took us off the second spot to not get the 1-2 for the team. Eventually, though, the ERS came back and we were able to claw back second place from Charles Leclerc, who came home in a very decent P3, you'd say. But honestly, for Button, it was something like out of a fairy tale. I kind of almost liken it to, it almost had the same sort of vibes, I feel, like when Ronaldo came back to Man United in his first game ever, scored the 2 goals, just had to be. It was like that. Button just had to win, of course, on that first race. I mean, he got very lucky, I will admit, but, you do need the rub of the green sometime. And although that was only one race, it does give us some sort of insight. It looks like Mercedes, in the hands of Verstappen at least, may be quite quick this season. The Red Bulls clearly have pace. They just got very unlucky. And the same could be said maybe of Ferrari and McLaren. But then you had some stars in the form of Guan Yu Zhou in the Williams that scored Williams more points in one race than they did all of last season. So there's some very interesting developments, and it's going to be such a tight fight this whole season, I think. You're going to see a few shock, knockouts in Q1, Q2 in the race. There may be, quite a few drivers actually that you think deserve to be in the points, but they're just pushed out of it because there's so many teams now that actually have the pace to maybe do something on the Sunday. It's a very hard one to call, and it's going to mean we need to be on our toes in terms of trying to react to it in the race, and we need to be on our best, kind of pace and, right on it, on the mark on Saturday in qualifying. And so, to speak of Saturday and qualifying, here we are then into Saturday at the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix. I think I maybe just pronounced that correctly, but I'm going to stick with Imola, I think, for the rest of the episode. But, a bit of a slow start for us. P12, nothing, out of the ordinary there. But what was out of the ordinary was Sergio Perez was knocked out in Q1. He's had a mare. I don't know what happened to him. He clearly has not set a good time because Mick Schumacher was way up in P2, and this is what I mean. You can't afford to make a mistake now in this sort of season with this tight grid, and so Perez has paid the ultimate price way down in P17. It's going to be a difficult Sunday for him now, and, we're lucky we get away with it. P12, still a little bit lower than you'd want to, and we need to be careful, one of these days, qualifying that low is going to catch us up in terms of Q1, being knocked out at some point, or at least Q2. So this is a very important second qualifying session, because if we are to qualify P12 again, obviously that's not going to be good enough for the top 10 shootout. So wrestling the car through the first sector and trying to use as much curb as we can, whilst also simultaneously not trying to ride it too much, because it can break our floor, of course. We've got simulation damage, you've got to remember, in this season and the entire series so far since the launch of the game. So need to be wary sometimes of, taking the max of the curbs. But that first lap was okay. Right now we're ahead of Guan Yu Zhou and Gasly, behind Schumacher, and we're ahead of Button, though, actually, to be fair. So right now we're actually looking better than Jenson, but both of us will need to improve because, P7 and 8, that would have maybe felt safe. I would have maybe been more confident about P7 and 8 last season or season 2. But now, if you're P7 and 8, you need to go again in Q2, because you could easily be knocked out. And there you go. We're down to P10. Button's improved. We need to improve across the line. And thankfully, that will be enough to get us through into the top 10 shootout. Only just, though. Look at that. Literally 1/10 slower. Literally 1/10 slower, less than that, and we would have been knocked out there. Russell Hamilton falls victim to it. Guan Yu Zhou, who did so well in the Williams, gets knocked out, but Bottas, look at him in the other Williams, P5 for him. But the McLaren's looking quick here in the second part qualifying. Leclerc up there, Gasly as well in the new improved AlphaTauri team, and then you've got Mick Schumacher solely flying the flag, but he kind of lost some pace, it would seem, compared to Q1, and Verstappen again showing that he is a good signing for the Silver Arrows, dragging that car up, or just maybe fulfilling the potential, really, more like of the Silver Arrows, because we know it's not really a case of the car's bad. It's kind of the case that Hamilton's AI, like last year's game, is just lost focus, lost momentum, and it's basically impossible for him to get it back. So Verstappen doing the job, and he's doing the job in qualifying in the last part of it, because he's on provisional pole right now by 1/10. We have sat out the first round of runs because I only have one set of soft tyres, of course, because we used 2 sets in Q2. Gasly is on the front row with him right now, provisionally. That is crazy. Lando alongside Jenson Button then in P4. Schumacher, Ricciardo, Leclerc, Sainz, Bottas, the two Ferraris will be disappointed at one of their home Grand Prix, one of 2 this season to be down there, so they're going to want to improve. Let's see what we can do, though, from P10. Button showing that there's some really good pace in the car, enough for maybe the second row of the grid, so let's try and see at least if we can try and match him maybe on this one and only flying lap. So it's almost like one-shot qualifying here in Q3 for me. Button down to P6 now, though, as other people are going quicker. Verstappen goes even better. I think Leclerc catapulted himself up the order and must have to overtake Button on the starting grid across the line for us, and it looks like it's going to be just behind Jenson on P7, our lucky number P7, and we are on the row behind him. He is actually alongside Schumacher then, but Verstappen on pole position, so showing that indeed Verstappen and Merc as a combo is actually pretty damn quick, and they could be contenders here. But Ferrari, at least in the hands of Leclerc, pull up their socks. That's a bit more like it from them in P2. Gasly, though, flying high in the AlphaTauri. Meanwhile, his teammate Tsunoda, we didn't even talk about him, was knocked out in Q2. So Gasly showing a Red Bull team, but obviously renewed a bit more now this season with a bit more prominence. And then Oro, in terms of the tyre wear, last season we kind of converted what was a 2-stop initially to a 1-stop due to the kind of situation. I don't know what's going to happen this time round. I felt like at Bahrain our tyre wear was pretty damn high. So let's watch out for that and see, if there's any early grid penalties to talk about. Let's go to the grid.
Hello there and welcome back to Imola, home circuit of the Scuderia Ferrari. We expect to see a lot of local supporters in red today. They've all turned out for what we have every expectation of being a sensational event here at the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix. 3.1 miles of track here at Imola, featuring 19 turns, 9 to the right and 10 to the left. Remember that Imola differs from most other Formula 1 circuits as it's driven anti-clockwise. Let's hope no one forgets that today. The exit from turn 18 will probably be the setup for many of today's overtakes, leading as it does into the longest straight of the circuit and its only DRS zone. Anthony Davidson joins me once again in the commentary box, and it's fantastic to have you with us here today. But I'm curious, as a man with experience out on the track, how do you stop those pre-race nerves from becoming overwhelming when you're lining up on the grid?
But from the moment qualifying's over, you start to feel the adrenaline in your body build up and the buzz in your stomach as you anticipate the rundown into turn 1. It's all a bit like going into battle, and the unknown situation makes you nervous. Those pre-race nerves are a good thing. The day you don't have them means that you don't care anymore. And of course, you have to make sure that all the procedures are second nature to you so that they're not taking up too much of your capacity.
Let's run you through the driver grid order for today's exciting race. Young superstar Max Verstappen starts from pole position, and it's Charles Leclerc in P2. Looking at the rest of today's grid, we have Gasly, Norris, Mick Schumacher and Button, the owner driver, Ricciardo, Sainz and Valtteri Bottas, Russell, Hamilton and Guan Yu Zhou and Tsunoda, Stroll, Giovinazzi, Sergio Perez and Callum Islet, Latifi, Lundgaard, Matsushita and Esteban Ocon rounds off the grid. It's almost time for those 5 red lights to go out. Then let's see who can prevail today.
Thankfully, no penalties to talk about, so everyone lines up where they qualified and everyone is happy going forward, and we can have some hard and fast racing. And Imola is always such that, an old school circuit, unforgiving at times, and we had such a fun race last season on the debut into F1 2021, remember, when it first came out as a DLC track, fighting for the win with the Ferraris. This time around, the car, the grid's a lot more competitive, so whether we're fighting for the win, I don't know. We're a little bit down the order. P7 versus, I think we qualified, a little bit higher last season. Like I said, the 2-stop versus the 1 will be the big question mark today, because I think our tyre wear is pretty damn high. But we're starting on the softs, and it's going to be all guns blazing at the beginning. Here we go then to 5 red lights to the second round of the season. Imola is underway, and it's a cracking start for Schumacher, wiggling around, trying to find some room as we get a bit of a slower one versus Ricciardo round our outside. The McLaren trying to go the long way round. We just about narrowly missed Button, and Schumacher's off. Schumacher's been spun around. I think he made contact there with Lando Norris maybe, and the Ferrari, and Schumacher's out of the Grand Prix. Virtual safety car has been called out. It's converted to a full safety car. Verstappen leads the way still. Gasly second, Leclerc now third. Let's look at a replay. Schumacher got such a good getaway, but then he just didn't have any room to go to work with. Then it was almost 3 wide. Norris gets squeezed out, and then Schumacher just tries too much of an audacious dive, and then, well, to be fair to him, he gets so unlucky with that bit of contact with the wall. The right tyre shears off so quickly there. He could have easily, different angle, still be in this race, but that was Schumacher making a very outlandish dive bomb. The second one we've seen in 2, Lando made a very similar one last episode, but yeah, Schumacher trying to overtake Gasly and Lando in one foul swoop, didn't work out for him, and so Red Bull now only have 1 car in this race, and it's Sergio Perez. He's down in P14, so they're going to have a very long afternoon. Meanwhile, we did well just to kind of maintain track position versus Ricciardo and Sainz. Ricciardo, we squeezed him out on the outside, and he has actually fallen behind Sainz then. Hamilton up into P12, Tsunoda P11, and Bottas P9 just ahead of Russell. That might be a tasty battle. Russell v Bottas, obviously the swap in real life from the Mercedes guys at the moment. We're now on to the restart. Lap number 3, Verstappen will lead us through, but this is a crucial restart, because under this safety car, I kind of realised if we are doing the 2-stop, we need to be flying past these guys and kind of overusing this soft compound tyre. So here we go on the restart. Button really slow for some reason there. He let off the throttle. I think Norris kind of almost dummied him a little bit on the restart there. So we're side by side with Jenson, so close on the right hand side, but a darting dive to the apex and the left-hander, and we're up into P5. Very close stuff to the grass with the left tyre there dipping in a little bit, but we're ahead. That's a crucial move on Button, because like I said, if we're doing the 2-stop, we need to lean on this soft tyre so much to try and get some pace. Meanwhile, we've got fighting going on between Ricciardo and Sainz, and the 2 made contact there. Ricciardo and Sainz going at it. Really aggressive stuff there from both of them, to be honest. Both of them equally at fault. If they've got damage there, I wonder. As now we watch Bottas and Russell. What did I say? This fight, the 2 that are swapping in real life from the Mercedes team in very different situations now. Bottas is in the Williams, Russell though in the Alpine, in this alternate F1 universe of ours in My Team Career Mode, but they're having a massive scrap there, and they're still side by side now for nearly half the lap. Round the outside Russell goes, and Bottas has to give up the position. Meanwhile though, behind, Tsunoda and Hamilton also side by side, but we cut back to the action with Ricciardo, and Ricciardo has licked the stamp and absolutely sent it. What a sensational dive bomb there by Rick Bobby to get Carlos Sainz. Didn't think he was going to do that. He was so far back, but he's done it. And meanwhile, we watch back on to this fight between Guan Yu Zhou and Hamilton. Can you believe it? Hamilton in a Mercedes car is having to really battle a Williams, and it's Guan Yu Zhou of all people there. And in the background, Sergio Perez is also close behind. But now, look at the bottom left. Sainz is in. Sainz is in. The Ferrari, has he got damage? He must have from that fight with Ricciardo. Yep, the front wing is going to change. He had damage from that fight with Ricciardo. Remember, simulation damage, it also means the AI are very susceptible to it, not just me, the player. So, Sainz, feeling the wrath of that. He must have had an end plate chopped off or something like that. And so he's had to pay for it with an early pit stop. It's still not end of the world, maybe. If he does an aggressive 2-stop, maybe he could use the pace that Leclerc has. If he finds that sort of pace for himself, could come back through into this race. But meanwhile, for us, speaking about finding some pace in this race, we're trying our best to push away from Jenson Button. About a second now between us, and we've caught up to Norris, who's been caught up in a train between him, Leclerc, and Gasly. But we have a beautiful run through the left-hander using so much ERS on the outside. It's a darting effort, and we're up into P4. Lando comes back at us, though, on the outside into the hairpin, having to defend the inside, but we just hold our racing line, and Lando goes wide. Norris has gone wide, and Jenson Button is through up into P5. Button and Norris now side by side, and Button will finish off the move. He's up into P5. The McLaren loses 2 places for 1, and with that, we've got a bit of clean air to work with. But lap 7, look at the tyre wear there. My rear end is really going loosey-goosey, and so we come in then for that first early pit stop, 1 of 2 today, as we commit early to the 2-stop. Now, to be fair, last season we did convert a 2-stop to a 1-stop, but this season, already, just with the tyre wear levels there, the percentages I'm seeing, and how the car physically felt on lap 7, the rear end stepping out so much in the last sector. For whatever reason, the tyre wear on this car is a little bit higher right now at Imola this season. Maybe because actually technically this season we've arrived with a car with higher downforce, therefore maybe, wearing out the tyres more because we're going quicker through every single corner and kind of, putting more pressure and forces on them. So for whatever the case is, I believe, I don't think we can do a 1-stop. I think a 1-stop will be slow for us, especially on the hard compounded tyre around here. Jenson may be different, but, he was always known for being quite smooth on his tyres at times. So it's a very different scenario for both different cars. We've gone early and committed to this, so let's just see if this pans out for us. It's a bit of a gamble, but so many times we gambled last season and it paid off. Meanwhile, Leclerc v Gasly, the 2 real-life friends going toe-to-toe, and Gasly just about hangs on there in P2. Robust defense from the Frenchman in the AlphaTauri to maintain P2. Leclerc has Button all in the mirrors now, as well as the McLaren in that Golf livery. Meanwhile, Verstappen, we haven't talked much about him because he's had a very quiet race so far. He's been controlling this, just keeping Gasly at an arm's length, 2.4 to about 3 seconds there in the Silver Arrow, and kind of, out there to prove a point, of course, after how the Bahrain Grand Prix ended for him, up in smokes, having to prove the Mercedes car is there, and that in the hands of him, he can take that back to the top of F1. Meanwhile, Perez and Hamilton locked in a battle with Guan Yu Zhou and Tsunoda in a bit of a train there. Hamilton struggling, though, for pace. To be fair, though, he's on medium, so he's on a very different strategy, different alternate starting tyre versus the cars around him. Meanwhile, for us, then, we are on a different compound to the cars around us right now, immediately in the form of Callum Ilott there. The Aston Martin continuing on that same set of softs there. So these guys are going really long. Lap 11, and most of these guys have still not pit off that soft tyre. But for me, you saw my tyre levels way too much, and the Haas, oh my god, the 2 Haas cars are having an absolute ding-dong battle, and we just completely stay out of it. What a neat bit of driving there, right to left, cut in tight, and just get the nice undercut line on both those guys. But those 2 are literally making contact there, so Gunther Steiner will be tearing out his hair watching that. But here we are then, we get past Leclerc, Gasly, Button, and we're through. We can see Verstappen up the road, so we have jumped them. Of course, though, we've got 1 more stop to make versus them. They're all on the hard tyres, so we've got to get a move on and chase after Verstappen. We've got to overtake him and then try and build a gap. That is the only way we're going to be here fighting anywhere near Gasly, Leclerc, Button at the end of the race. But Perez is in then, along with Tsunoda, and so we climb up to P3. Hamilton still staying out on the mediums in the lead, but obviously he will pit eventually, so it will be eventually Verstappen leading, myself in second. Then you've got Leclerc, Gasly, and Leclerc has jumped Gasly then in the pit stop phases, and Ferrari have done a great job against AlphaTauri, and they've jumped him. Meanwhile, we've got Bottas fighting Ricciardo. Very odd fight. I'm still not used to seeing Williams looking this good, but it's actually wonderful to see this car right up there, fighting for some points. Bottas on an alternative strategy right now on the softs, but let's see how it pans out for him. Meanwhile, Sainz in P10, from that early pit stop. Somewhat recovering, maybe, I don't know. Perez behind Guan Yu Zhou still going on. He's on the hards now till the end of the race. Let's see what Perez can do. I think Perez could still get some points, in this race if he continues on this kind of trajectory of pace. So let's watch out for him. Meanwhile, for us, though, we're chasing after Max Verstappen. Hamilton still in the lead of this race, but it's early days. He's still going on those mediums. We are on a set of mediums, and Verstappen is on hards ahead of us. We've got to overtake him. We set the fast lap of the Grand Prix, and we're going to go for the move on the right-hand side. Easy does it. Up into second place. Verstappen, though, not putting up much of a fight. I think he knows the real fight today is just we're trying to keep Gasly, Leclerc, and Button at bay. For us, we are now into first place on lap 15, and we press on, trying to build the gap. 2.3 it is, so we're using the medium, leaning on it, trying to build that gap as much as we can to negate the pit stop, but it's going to be hard. These cars are all very quick. Meanwhile, though, Leclerc v Gasly v Button is hotting up once again. Will Leclerc go for a move? Yes, he does. On the outside here. And Gasly, it's deja vu as Gasly tries to defend, but Leclerc has none of it. No! Gasly maintains the position. He maintains third place. And now Button will try and go down the inside. Jenson Button. What a move there. Up into P4 until Leclerc loses a position rather than gaining. But hang on, we kind of missed it because at some point Gasly got back ahead of Leclerc. Remember, in the first round of pit stops, Leclerc did actually jump the AlphaTauri, so we kind of missed when that happened, but they swapped positions, and so Leclerc tried to swap them back and get back to third place. Didn't work out, and instead Button up into P4. Then you've got, behind Leclerc, Bottas, Ricciardo, Guan Yu Zhou, Sainz, Perez, now into the points. P10, making progress, and Bottas, no! Bottas, he was in P7. Real life, let alone the game. And speaking about bad luck, we've got Gasly and Leclerc. They are in for a second pit stop. And I wonder, yes, this must be for damage. Yes, it is. The front wings being changed on both their cars. And so just like that, the race has been tipped on its head because you've got three people who were in the top 10, now not anymore. Button will effectively be in P2 eventually because once I make my pit stop, it'll be Verstappen from Button because Gasly and Leclerc having to make an early pit stop. And this is a replay of Lando Norris also having to do the same. So this race really is rapidly changing, all due to simulation damage. A lot of two stops now happening that are forced due to having to change the front wing. Meanwhile, lap 17, we go a little bit wide there, and we're really wringing the neck out of these tyres, and we lose the back end and almost send into the grass. I know it looks a bit comical, but the rear end really stepping because Verstappen's putting me under pressure. I'm trying my hardest to keep up the pace, but the tyres are just screaming out to say no because the wear is there, and we're going to be coming in at least in the next, I would say, lap or two, potentially, for then the set of, well, not even softs, I think another set of mediums because the tyre wear has been so high. So we're in now, like I said, lap 19, then 2 laps later, Verstappen back into the lead of this Grand Prix in his Mercedes car. Button will take P2 eventually as he comes down the main straight, but we're in now for our second scheduled pit stop, unlike Gasly, Leclerc, and Norris. We're in, no front wing change, new set of mediums, and that was a sweet pit stop. 1.9, really good stuff there from the lads. But Button up into P2, Ricciardo P3 now, and the McLaren flying really high there, and Guan Yu Zhou again in the Williams doing 5, Hamilton P6. So look at that, we've got some really top drives here. Guan Yu Zhou in P4, Perez recovering from, remember, being knocked out in Q1, he's up into P5. Hamilton didn't really look like he had much pace earlier, he was wallowing down in P12, but now he's P6. That's not too bad considering how poor Hamilton's AI has been consistently since season 1. The same sort of downfall, strangely enough, that he kind of had in F1 2020, my team career mode. But Perez, what a recovery for him in P5 in the Red Bull, the only Red Bull left in this race, of course, because Schumacher out of this one early on lap 1. And then, yeah, the Chinese driver, Guan Yu Zhou, P4, bit of a pay driver in real life, you may say, but in the game here, doing a stellar job. He's going to get even more points for Williams then, with Bottas out of this Grand Prix. He's contributing nothing to the team so far. Obviously not his own fault today. And then Ricciardo, the only McLaren in that top 5 there, in a podium slot. Lando down in P9. So like I alluded to, we've seen with McLaren this weird pattern. Lando was good in, season 1. Then it was Ricciardo season 2. Lando in season 3, and he won the championship, let alone just being better than Ricciardo. And now we're seeing Ricciardo better in Season 4 again, so there's this weird yo-yo effect with the two McLaren drivers. Don't know if there's anything in the coding that's like doing that on purpose. And then meanwhile, speaking about people doing well, Verstappen just controlling this race, dominating it. Back to our POV though, lap 21, 11 laps to go. We're on fresher medium. Surely we can overtake these guys. We catch up to Hamilton, gaining. We're looking at a little move on the inside, just unable to make it. That would have been a very, very audacious move if we had done that. But, you know, Hamilton was inviting me there, you know, with the ERS. We were getting a very good run down that crest, but a bit of a wide chicane there, having to take the escape road and go off a little bit, losing a bit of time to Hamilton actually going a little bit wide like that. So having to be patient now with Hamilton and looking to now make the move on the main straight. Nice front end there, the medium, the fresher mediums, really getting the nose turned in. And now we're going to have DRS, of course, and we're going to be deploying ERS all the way down this straight. We go for the move on the inside. It's so close to the wall. Brilliant stuff here at Imola. I love that corner. It's so bloody quick. And, you know, the AI, the racing line they take means that you have to really be quite ballsy of not letting off the throttle when you get a bit scared getting close to the wall. And it really, you know, rewards bravery there as we now catch up to Sergio Perez and a load of traffic. Lundgaard, you've got Matsushita in the other Haas as well. So Perez susceptible. The Red Bull is actually a very quick car, remember, and he showed some good pace here, Sergio Perez has. But the traffic is not going to help him out there. And Guan Yu Zhou is also just up the road. So P4 could be on the cards for us. It would be a very good recovery considering he made one whole extra pit stop. But to be fair, Perez, you know, the likes of him, he's had a great race from where he was at the start of this race. But he lost a lot of time here in the traffic. He'll be really frustrated with the blue flags and the slower cars as we go through that chicane. And we're right up his chuff. Could we even make a move into the second last corner? We might go for it, you know, down the inside. And there's going to be a very tight exit yet. But we make it because Perez has to give up the position because he just doesn't have the grip. But what he will have is a great exit, and I have no ERS left, so no deployment until now when we cross the line. And Perez is alongside us then, despite us having DRS open. The Red Bull very quick in a straight line off that corner, but we are able to use the DRS to just maintain the P5 and get to the next apex left-hander, and now use the clean air and chase after Guan Yu Zhou, the Williams. We're fighting a Williams for the P4. This really is a new age in this My Team career mode. Long may it continue. It'd be nice to see if Williams can kind of stay up here as a team, not just for this season, but future ones potentially. I don't know. We'll have to see how that goes with the AI and the kind of, you know, R&D and money management from Williams. But we're closing up to the Chinese driver. Can we get the job done in Sector 2, I wonder? The Williams, it has some speed, but you can kind of tell that we still have the better downforce maybe, but also especially, you know, the tyre difference just here, medium to hards. We should have this right now. The tyre is still with us. It is wearing out though. We need to be wary of that. But Guan Yu Zhou being very, very aggressive. But we are even more aggressive with our move right around the outside of him there. And that's an exquisite overtake up into P4. I didn't think we could actually make that happen because the Williams was really giving us a really good squeeze, but we just committed to the left-hand side and we're into P4. But it's not the end of the story because, like I said, the tyre wear now is kicking in for us and the medium is now losing some pace. And as much as I pushed hard trying to get rid of Zhou, he's still there, you know, within 1 second, and the Williams is very quick in a straight line, so let's watch out for that as we go on towards the last lap of the Grand Prix. Verstappen leads the way from Button, Ricciardo, myself, Guan Yu Zhou, Sergio Perez, Hamilton, Leclerc, Stroll and Sainz rounds out the top 10. A dismal day in the office for the reigning world champion Lando Norris. Again, no points for the second race in a row. And the AlphaTauris too, a dismal day. They were both in the top 6, now out of the points, but look at this, on to the last lap of the Grand Prix. A bit of a sitting duck as the Williams has DRS and Guan Yu Zhou comes through on the right hand side, and look, he's flying past us despite deploying ERS all the way down that straight, that first part of the straight, off the final corner. The Williams rockets past us, and we're going to have to try and do this overtake into the final sector. Our tyres are worn out. Look at the bottom right, the orange icon. Guan Yu Zhou defensive on the racing line, but we dive down the inside, big lock up on the left-hand side, and we just about slow down the car, trying not to ruin Zhou's race and crash into him. We just just slow the car down. It's a kamikaze move, but it gets us up into P4 right at the death. He gave us a real good fight. That Williams is rapid with DRS there, but we get the P4, recover well with the tyre wear. But what a race for the likes of Sergio Perez and Guan Yu Zhou. But Verstappen takes it.
They take the checkered flag then here in Imola in what has been another outstanding Grand Prix. Anthony Davidson, how do you think they were able to set themselves apart today?
Without a doubt, the safety car changed everything today. The key to their success was keeping calm and reacting to the situation quickly. We've seen teams in the past throw away wins because they were too hesitant, but here they were decisive, and that's allowed them to take the advantage.
And I can see the drivers starting to approach the podium for the victory celebrations. A real team victory today. Everybody played their part. Congratulations then to Mercedes, your race winners today.
Well, Verstappen bounces back in the best fashion from that DNF in the opening round. The win at Imola for Mercedes. Mercedes back on the top step of the podium. It was the correct decision to sign Verstappen away from Red Bull. He gets their first win in a long, long while. Button, though, ever consistent. P2, not off the 2 places. I know there's only been 2 races, but still, for a return to Formula 1, that is a massive one. Ricciardo P3, showing McLaren done by, and we have recovered really well. We committed early to the 2 stop because of the tyre wear, and it's, paid dividends in P4 rather than, Gasly, Leclerc, Lando all having to do a forced 2 stop, and, Leclerc only just got P8 there in the end, and Sainz P10. Hamilton, Perez, and Zhou, a really good showing for them, especially Perez, considering he got knocked out in Q1. That's a massive comeback for him, but, another chaotic one, and this season, it's just showing that if you make contact, have damage, extra pit stop, whatever, if your race doesn't go, to plan, then it's so much worse for you than it used to be because the whole grid is so much closer. Like, there's no room for error. It's almost like F1 esports in a way, It's almost like F1 esports in a funny way, but the prevailing thing between myself and Jenson Button in P1, the constructors, by a decent margin. Mercedes P2, Williams in 3rd, ahead of Ferrari, Red Bull, and McLaren there. It's going to be still quite hard to call. There's so many other circuits coming up that are very different to what we've had at Imola and Bahrain. So I think we're going to have to wait until maybe about, I would say round 6 or 7 before we start to see a pattern maybe emerging of what the kind of top teams are fighting for the championship. But you got to say, immediately, Jenson looks consistent and looks like, well, he's beating me in quali and in the race. I was nowhere near him in the race today. And yesterday, last round, he got lucky. But, this is kind of almost, for the third year, for a third season in a row, I've got a quick teammate that is showing me how it's done, at the first part of the season. Let's see how it ends, of course. A long way to go still in this 16-round calendar. Guys, if you did enjoy this one, though, hit the like button. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. If you're new around here, then do get subscribed for weekly Formula 1 content. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.